My name is Danise Coon. I am a senior research specialist with the Departments of Plant and Environmental Science and Extension Plant Sciences at New Mexico State University. I've been working with chili peppers for over 20 years, looking at things like disease resistance, creating new varieties to help our growers and our processors, and looking at just the general how they grow and what we can do as scientists to make it better.
What first got you interested in this work?
So I grew up on a little farm in northern New Mexico, and some of the things we grew were New Mexican chili peppers and jalapenos and bell peppers, and had kind of our little own roadside stand where we sold produce. And so I kind of grew up farming and then came to school at New Mexico State University and started pursuing a degree in horticulture. My Hort 100 professor sent me to Dr. Paul Bosland, who was the director of the Chili Pepper Institute and head of the NMSU chili breeding program at the time. And I got a student position, and I just kind of got sucked into the world of chilies and never got out.
What about chilies intrigued you?
It's a culture here in New Mexico, first of all, and I grew up eating them and enjoying them, making salsas, making chili rellenos, making all of the dishes that are New Mexico dishes, and then to come to school and learn all about it from a scientific standpoint was so fascinating to me. I learned, what capsaicin was, and what scientists are doing to create better chilies, all of the breeding methods that we were using. And there's so many different colors and shapes and sizes, and then where they came from, and they're used as a spice and a medicine in culinary uses. So there's just so much about it that was great, that it just intrigued me and hooked me.
When you mentioned this idea of cultivating better peppers and trying to think about how we make peppers better, what does that mean?
So what we do from a breeding standpoint is we'll look at plants that are growing, and if there's a certain plant habit or a fruit habit, say some fruits on or some chili pods on this plant, or a lot bigger or thicker walled, or we're tasting them and they have amazing flavor. Those are things that we kind of want to move forward in the new generations, and those are the things we want to breed for. If we see like an area of plants that are devastated by a disease or a virus, but there's one little plant that's living, we're like, okay, did that plant just get skipped, or does it have some resistance to this disease or virus? And those are all things that we're always looking for to create healthier, better, stronger, more robust chili plants.
Is there a preference for like thinner versus thicker flesh and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So it kind of depends on what you're going to use it for. In the dry down industry, where they take the pods and let them mature to their complete maturity stage, it's usually like a red stage or orange or yellow. Most chili peppers start out green and then have a color transition. So if you want to dry it down for powder, or for something like that that's used in the dry process, you definitely want something with a thinner wall, because that's going to be a little bit easier to dry down and won't take as much energy. If you're using it for like the green stage, where you're going to make chili rellenos, or you're going to freeze it, chop it up and freeze it, or you're going to can it, something like that, you'll want something with a thicker wall so it's more meaty.
So the peppers that you're growing, you're using them in a variety of different ways, like fresh, dried.
Absolutely. Yes.
And okay. As you were talking, it just made me think of like chili powder. And I guess I feel silly for saying this because I feel like I'm really into cooking, but I'm like, I actually don't even know what type of pepper is behind chili powder. Is that a specific type of pepper?
So it kind of depends. So let's take paprika, for example. There's Hungarian paprika, there's Spanish paprika, there's New Mexican paprika. So, and all of these are different in the ways that they develop heat. So a lot of the Hungarian paprika doesn't have any heat. New Mexican paprika doesn't have any heat. It doesn't produce any capsaicin. But then Spanish paprika has just a little bit of heat. So there's so many different, just paprika alone, there's so many different varieties.
In terms of actually growing the peppers, are there certain environmental factors that can impact specifically how spicy the pepper can get?
Absolutely. So we actually think that that was an evolutionary response, but chili peppers actually producing capsaicin was an evolutionary response to keep mammals from eating them. The thing with mammals is our digestive systems destroy the seed.
Mhm.
Whereas something like a bird, or even fish, if they were to eat some chili pods and pass it through their digestive system, it actually comes out unharmed and can grow into a new plant. So birds have actually developed this really nice symbiotic relationship with wild chili peppers, and birds were the primary agent that dispersed wild chili peppers out of their center of origin. They still have the TRPV1 receptor, but it's not as intense as mammals. So they can eat really hot chilies and not be bothered by them like we are. When chili peppers are being stressed in the environment, say lack of moisture, super hot air temperatures, really intense sun beating down on them. Anytime the plant is being put through this stressful environmental conditions, they will actually produce more capsaicin, and it's a response to survive, and to keep something that would destroy the seed from eating it.
In terms of like measuring spice, I know there are a lot of different ways to do it. Is it mainly by taste, or are you also using specific laboratory techniques to do that?
So when we're out in the field and we're making selections for certain plants that we're going to move forward in the breeding process, we'll definitely taste them. There's a lot that happens there too. So there are some people that have lots of TRPV1 receptors in their mouth and think things are actually a lot hotter because they have so many of those receptors. And then there's people that don't have as many of those receptors and can eat really hot chilies and it doesn't bother them. So you have to kind of train people to go, okay, is this mild, medium, or hot? And we kind of out in the field just address it by mild, medium, or hot. Now, once we start collecting data on all of this stuff, we'll do it much more scientifically. We then take the samples and we dry them down completely. We'll grind them into a really fine powder using a powder mill. And then that powder is actually cooked down with special chemicals and ingredients, and then put through what's called an HPLC machine, and that stands for high performance liquid chromatography. And that machine will actually count the individual capsaicinoids and is super precise about the capsaicinoids in that sample. That's the number of capsaicinoids are then usually given to us in a computer program in parts per million, and then that parts per million number is put into a special formula that gives us Scoville heat units.
Is there a certain range that is like most popular or most common, or do you like a wide variety?
So, with New Mexican types here in New Mexico, medium to medium hot is usually the most popular, but there's a lot of people out there that just love the super hot stuff and they can eat these crazy hot, super hot peppers and they love it. And it's become really popular. There's like whole TV programs dedicated to eating some of this crazy hot stuff, and it's wild. But yeah, definitely for like New Mexican types, it's a medium to medium hot.
In terms of where the capsaicin is concentrated in the pepper, is there, like, I know you're talking before about some evolutionary advantages to pepper plants having capsaicin. Is there a reason for it being in the membrane and the seeds rather than the flesh?
Yeah, absolutely. So the seeds are actually connected to the membranes and the placenta. And so being in such close proximity to that kind of protects those seeds from getting eaten. And so that's one thing. Most chili peppers only produce the capsaicin on the placenta, but we recently found out here in New Mexico State, and I say recently, but it's probably been about 10 years now, that the super hot chilies, the ones over 1 million Scoville heat unit, actually produce the capsaicin vesicles in the walls as well. And that's why they're so hot. Such a new discovery. We really haven't delved into like why these super hot chilies are doing this, but yeah, it's super, super interesting.
You mentioned new discoveries. What are you currently researching, or what's a current problem you're exploring?
The new chili breeder at NMSU is doing a lot of research on genotyping by sequencing. And so he wants to kind of speed up the breeding process. It's always been done by classical breeding methods. And with classical breeding, it can take up to sometimes 9 years to develop a new variety. So with doing this DNA sequencing and seeing exactly what genes of interest that you want to move forward, it's going to cut a lot of that, in half or more, for getting new varieties out. So that's one of the big research pushes right now at NMSU. And then always disease resistance. Chilies are just plagued by diseases. We have several faculty that are working on disease resistance in chili peppers.
Interesting. I actually just started growing some chili peppers in my garden. Are there certain varieties that like you recommend for maybe a new gardener? I'm guessing it depends a bit on where you are. But like, are there certain ones that are maybe easier to grow than others?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I try to say, if you're a novice chili grower, start with something like a jalapeno. If you go right into like bell peppers and New Mexican types, you're going to be disappointed because they're so difficult to grow. I can't even grow them that well at home. So that if that tells you anything, out in the big field where we have research plots, it's a little easier because we have so many people managing it and looking after it. So I always try jalapenos and serranos first, and can make some wicked salsas with my fresh stuff. Jalapenos and serranos are probably two of the easiest types of chili peppers to grow in home gardens, and they do really well.
You mentioned salsa. Are there any other like recipes or foods that you recommend people or students try?
Not only salsas, but pico de gallos, and even like fermenting to make your own hot sauces are all kinds of things that you can do.
Yeah, I've not tried hot sauce yet, like making my own hot sauce, but that's definitely on my to-do list.
I actually tried it for the first time last summer, and it wasn't bad. I had a bunch of cayennes, and I fermented them and strained it and did all that kind of stuff, and it was not bad.
Okay, good to know. You mentioned the colors a couple of times. Do you like, now that you're mentioning these colors, I'm realizing that that is pretty unique to peppers in general. Like I think of other fruits and there are different colors, but not quite the variety. Do you know, is there a reason for that?
Um, I'm really guessing it's because of human selection over years and years and years. We'll see something pop up. And the interesting with chili peppers is they mutate really easily. We've had we have lots of lines of ornamental peppers that are super colorful and really pretty and different shapes and sizes. And within like 5 or 6 years, we'll get a new mutation out of a population. And we're just amazed at how easily they mutate. Those mutations are usually lead to something with the color or the flavor or the heat or the size or even the foliage on the plant. So many different things, it's just amazing.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been really exciting just to hear what you're doing and why this interested you. And I think we'll have a lot of people that are equally interested in either trying something new or learning something new, making something new.
That's wonderful. And I'm happy to help out.